I gave that company everything. They took it, then forgot me the moment I broke. No messages, just silence. That's when I finally understood my worth. For years, no weekends, no holidays, no sick days. I worked straight through birthdays, funerals, anniversaries. Hell, I once missed my cousin's wedding because a delivery truck busted an axle in the snow, and I volunteered to stay late. That was me. Always the guy who stepped up. I punched in early, stayed late, picked up shifts that were not mine, covered for folks who never returned the favor, brought donuts on Mondays, and cleared the break room microwave like I was trying to win Employee of the Month, which, by the way, they discontinued in year 2 to save costs. Still, I kept at it, loyal to the bone, because I believed it meant something. They said loyalty was rare, that it mattered, that it would pay off someday. So I believed them. I was 34 when I started that job at Falcon Distributors, a warehouse gig out in the industrial edge of town. Not glamorous, but solid. Good enough pay, decent benefits. The kind of place where you could see yourself building something. A life, maybe. A reputation, at the very least. And build I did. I built trust. Dependability. I made myself the guy they could lean on when things went sideways. Management loved that. At first. My body, though? Not so much. Back then, I ignored the warnings. The creaking knees. The stabbing lower back. That constant, dull pressure behind my eyes after too many 16-hour days. I told myself it was temporary. Just a season. Keep grinding, I thought. One day, they'll notice. One day, it'll pay off. I kept pushing. Even when my mom landed in the hospital that winter with pneumonia, I stayed behind because we were short 3 loaders and shipments were backed up. I called her from the loading dock between pallets of office supplies. She sounded tired. I remember her saying, "You sure they do the same for you?" I laughed it off. Said they would. But in truth, I did not know. I just needed to believe it. That is the thing about loyalty. It feels like virtue until it starts to feel like a trap. And I did not see it. Not then. Because when you are in the thick of it, running on fumes, running from yourself, you do not feel the weight until it finally knocks you flat. And that day came. Not with a bang. Not with a scream. It came in the form of a slow collapse. Right there, under the humming warehouse lights, somewhere between a shipment of toner cartridges and office chairs, my legs gave out. My hands went numb. The floor rushed up like it was glad to see me. And for the first time in 4 years, I missed a shift. What came next? A hospital bed. Machines. Beeping. Tubes. A cold white ceiling that never blinked. But the worst part? Not the pain. Not the silence. It was who never showed up. And that was when I realized I was never part of their plan. I was only ever part of their schedule. They said I had great work ethic. That I was the backbone of the team. Those were the words they used in passing, between meetings, in half-hearted thank you emails, or when the regional manager stopped by for a photo op and needed someone who looked reliable. They never said, overworked. Never said, exploited. They just called it dedication. I wore it like a badge. Took pride in being the one they could count on. When Mike from receiving got shingles and vanished for 6 weeks, I took over his shift. When Devin's wife had a baby, I filled in for night runs. When Janine quit on the spot after a shouting match with the supervisor, guess who they asked to train her replacement? I never said no, even when I wanted to. Even when I felt that creeping sense of dread on Sunday nights, the kind that coils in your stomach and makes the clock feel like a countdown to something you cannot name. I buried it, swallowed it, said things like, just gotta power through. And I did. Powered right through skipped lunches and sore joints and migraines that started in the base of my neck and crawled up to the corners of my eyes. Powered through family dinners I never attended. Through weekends I spent sleeping, not resting. There is a difference. You would think someone would stop you, pull you aside, say, "Hey, man, you doing all right?" But no one ever did. Because I was always smiling. Always on time. Always fine. That was the role I played. The steady one. The rock. My sister called once, just once, to ask if I could come to my nephew's school play. He was the little tree in some kindergarten production. She said he had been talking about it for weeks. I remember staring at my phone while sitting in the forklift, her voice on speaker while I updated inventory logs. I told her I could not make it. That work needed me. She paused for a second, then said, "He'll be disappointed." I hung up feeling like garbage. But I still stayed late that night, reorganizing aisle 12 because someone had to do it. The irony is, no one remembered. No one ever does. Not the nights you stayed late. Not the holidays you skipped. Not the pain in your chest you ignored just so pallets would ship on time. I thought I was building something. What I was actually doing. Burning. Quietly. Slowly. From the inside out. But I told myself the same thing every time I felt it creeping in. One day, it'll all be worth it. That lie kept me going longer than I care to admit. Until the day it could not anymore. And that day? It came faster than I expected. It started like any other morning, except it didn't. I remember waking up with a weird pressure behind my eyes, like I had slept with a cinder block on my face. My hands were stiff, fingers curled slightly like they forgot how to straighten overnight. I sat up and immediately felt dizzy. Thought maybe I was dehydrated. Drank some water, shoved a granola bar in my mouth, and limped my way into my uniform like a soldier going into battle. The warehouse was freezing that day. Air vents blasting cold air for ventilation, even though it felt more like punishment. I clocked in at 6:15, 15 minutes early as usual. Nobody said anything. They never did. My presence was expected, not appreciated. Halfway through the shift, while hauling boxes onto the conveyor line, I felt it. A sharp pinch in my chest. Not unbearable. Not enough to stop me. Just enough to make me pause and take a breath that did not feel quite right. I kept going. Because that was what I always did. About an hour later, I was in the back room lifting a stack of printer boxes when the edges of my vision started to blur. The walls looked like they were pulsing, breathing. I blinked hard. Took a step backward. Then I stumbled. The world went sideways. I remember falling slowly, like the air turned to syrup, and hitting the concrete with the kind of thud you feel in your teeth. Everything got quiet after that. Not literally, but inside me. Like someone turned the volume down on life. The hum of the conveyor. The chatter of coworkers. The ding of forklifts reversing. It all became distant. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling beams, trying to will my limbs to move. They would not. It was like my body just tapped out. A blur of faces hovered over me. Someone yelled my name. Someone else called for help. A manager showed up, waving his hands, panicking like someone who had no clue what to do when the dependable guy finally broke. Next thing I remember, I was in the back of an ambulance. Then fluorescent lights. A nurse's voice. Machines beeping in rhythm with a heart that could not decide whether to speed up or give up. The diagnosis? Severe exhaustion. Dehydration. Muscle strain. Sky-high blood pressure. Something about overexertion over time. I tuned out after the third phrase. I just lay there, hooked up to tubes, wrapped in a scratchy hospital gown, staring at a ceiling that looked no different from the warehouses. And you know what I was thinking? Not about my health. Not about my future. I was thinking about the shift I was missing. About the schedule I was ruining. About how my absence would screw up the logistics report. That is how deep I was in it. Even in that moment, I still thought I had let them down. What I did not know yet was that they had already let me go. Long before I ever hit the ground. I was in that hospital bed for almost 2 days before I really understood what had happened. The nurse told me I had blacked out from sheer physical burnout. That I was lucky I had not done permanent damage to my heart. She said my vitals were concerning when I came in, and the stress levels in my blood work were the kind they usually saw in people twice my age. She asked if I had anyone I wanted her to call. Family. A friend. A boss. I told her no. And I meant it. Because deep down, I already knew what the response would be. Still, out of habit, or maybe desperation, I checked my phone. A beat-up Samsung that barely held a charge anymore, sitting there on the rolling tray beside a half-eaten cup of Jell-O. 0 missed calls. 0 texts. No, get well soon. No, what happened? Not even a lazy thumbs-up emoji from the warehouse group chat. Nothing. I stared at that screen like it owed me answers. I refreshed the app, then again, even though I knew nothing would change. The silence was louder than anything they could have said. That was when it really hit me. I had collapsed at work. I had been taken away in an ambulance. And nobody had bothered to check in. Not my supervisor. Not HR. Not even the assistant manager I had pulled doubles for so he could take his beach vacation last year. I was not a teammate. I was not family. I was not even a person. I was a name on a time card. I had always imagined that if something ever happened to me, someone would care. That someone might swing by the hospital, or at least shoot a text saying, "Hang in there, man." That my loyalty meant I had earned that much. But no one came. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the day after that. And the longer I sat there under those cold fluorescent lights, the more I realized how foolish I had been. How much I had convinced myself that I was irreplaceable. I was not. I was replaced before the stretcher even cooled. The worst part? I did this to myself. I was the one who said yes every time. I was the one who thought being dependable meant being valuable. Turns out, it just made me invisible. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. Not rage. Not sadness. Just clarity. That hospital bed felt more honest than any meeting I had ever sat through. More honest than the phony, good job emails. More honest than the handshake the boss gave me when I pulled 3 straight weeks of overtime without asking for a dime more. I had built my whole identity around being the guy who never said no. The one they could call at 2 in the morning. The one who stayed late without complaint. The one who kept the whole thing glued together, even when the glue started eating through the cracks in his own life. But lying there, hooked up to machines, hearing only the steady beeps and the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes down the hallway, I felt it. All of it. The dinners I missed. The birthdays I forgot. The calls I silenced from my sister because I was too tired to talk. The weekends I gave up for nothing but another logged hour and a nod from a manager who would not even text me now that I was broken and out of sight. I remembered the day I canceled a weekend getaway with Ashley, the one person who had stuck with me through the worst of it. She had planned the whole thing. A quiet cabin, no phones, no obligations. I backed out the night before because someone called in sick. She did not yell. She just looked disappointed. A few weeks later, she stopped asking me to go anywhere. A month after that, she stopped asking anything at all. I told myself it was worth it. That we would take a trip next year. That I was just building our future. Funny how quickly you start lying to yourself when you want to believe the suffering is noble. That moment in the hospital, I saw through all of it. The overtime. The missed memories. The bruises I ignored. The grind I wore like armor. It was not loyalty. It was fear. Fear that if I stopped being useful, I would stop being needed. But now, I had stopped. My body had made that decision for me. And guess what? The world kept spinning. They found someone to fill my spot by the next morning. One of the new hires, probably. I heard through a buddy who worked third shift that the boss did not even mention what happened. Just told everyone to stay sharp. I was not mentioned. I was not missed. And that was the moment I promised myself something. No more yes for people who would not notice if I disappeared. No more breaking my back so someone else could look good on a spreadsheet. That shift inside me, it was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was quiet. Like someone flipping a switch in an empty room. But it changed everything. Because that was the last time I said yes when I should have said, not anymore. When the nurse came in with my discharge papers, she smiled and said, "You're free to go." Those words hit harder than I expected. Not because I was excited to leave, but because, for the first time in years, I realized I had nowhere to be. No warehouse waiting. No truck routes. No crates stacked, so high they felt like they might crush me if I sneezed wrong. Just silence. Empty hours. I sat there on the edge of the bed, hospital socks still on my feet, shoes in my hands, trying to figure out what came next. It was strange. I had built my entire world around a clock and button and a fluorescent badge. And now, stripped of all that, I felt naked. I walked outside into the daylight and squinted like I had not seen the sun in years. My car was still in the lot, dusty and dented, the same way I had left it. The same way I had left myself. On the drive home, I passed by the gas station where I used to grab coffee every morning at 5:45 sharp. The clerk, Teresa, always had a glazed donut ready for me. She waved when she saw my car roll by, but I kept going. I could not go back there. Not yet. When I pulled into my apartment complex, everything felt unfamiliar. I had lived there for 5 years, but I could not remember the last time I had really been there. Not just sleeping. Not just stumbling in, showering, and collapsing into bed. I mean actually present. Inside, the place looked the same, kind of. Dusty table. A few unopened letters. The same dishes in the sink I had left behind the morning I collapsed. The silence pressed in like it wanted to start a conversation I had been avoiding for years. I dropped my keys on the counter, sat on the edge of the couch, and I let it hit me. The grief. Not for the job, but for the version of me I had thrown away chasing recognition that was never coming. I cried. Not like in the movies. Not loud, not dramatic. Just slow, quiet tears that ran down my face while the ceiling fan clicked above me. I thought about calling someone. Anyone. But I realized I had spent so long saying, "I got it," that nobody believed I ever needed help. So instead, I sat with the silence. And for the first time in years, I let it stay. That night, I did not set an alarm. I did not check the schedule. I did not prep a uniform. I just went to bed. And in the dark, I whispered something out loud. just to hear it from my own mouth. I am done. But the story was not over. Because in the days that followed, something happened I never saw coming. Someone showed up, and they did not come to check in. They came to take what was left. It was 3 days after I got home when I heard the knock. Middle of the afternoon. I was still in sweatpants, sitting on the couch with a half-eaten microwave burrito in my hand and a rerun of some home renovation show playing in the background. The kind of day where you feel like you are floating through molasses, not really alive, but not quite dead either. The knock came again, this time louder, sharper. I opened the door and saw a man I had never met standing there in a Falcon Distributors vest, company logo stitched neatly over his heart like a target. "Hey," he said, like we were old friends. "You're Mike, right?" I nodded, still holding the burrito like it might defend me. "I'm Julio. They told me to drop off your final paperwork. And, he looked uncomfortable. Your badge. They said it was still active." I stared at the badge in his hand. That stupid plastic rectangle I used to tap against the security scanner like it meant something. Like it gave me purpose. It looked smaller now. Cheap. Julio glanced past me into the apartment. "They also said to let you know the system's already been updated. They reassigned your shifts." Just like that. I took the envelope from him without a word. "Hope you're feeling better, man," he said, and gave me an awkward nod before turning to leave. I closed the door slowly, set the envelope on the counter. I did not open it. I did not need to. I knew what was inside. Final paycheck stub, Cobra health insurance info, maybe a thank you letter printed off a template. But what gutted me most was Julio. He looked like me. 5 years ago. Same kind of hopeful eyes. Same overeager tone. Like he still believed this job was going to turn into something. Like he still thought they would remember his name. I remembered that feeling. And for the first time, I felt anger. Not at Julio. Not even at the company. At myself. Because I had been that guy. And now I was the afterthought. I stared at that badge on the counter until the sun went down. And somewhere between the silence and the slow fade of daylight, I made a decision. I was going back. Not to beg. Not for revenge. But to say something no one ever says until it is too late. And believe me, they were not ready for what I had to say. I woke up the next morning with a fire in my chest. Not pain. Not fear. Something different. It had been a week since I collapsed. 7 days since my body gave up and my life cracked wide open. And now, for reasons I could not quite explain, I was ironing the only decent shirt I had left and brushing dust off my old boots. Not for a shift. I was not clocking in. I was walking in for myself. I drove slow, windows down, letting the summer air hit my face like a wake-up slap. The warehouse came into view like a ghost from a life I no longer lived. Same faded red bricks. Same patchy grass on the side. Same row of dented employee cars. I parked across the street. Sat there for a full minute, engine idling. My hands trembled just a bit. Not from nerves, but from memory. Like muscle reflex. My body still remembered how to dread this place. Then I killed the engine, stepped out, and walked through the front doors. Inside, everything smelled like it always did, cardboard and sweat and burnt coffee. Familiar voices buzzed in the distance. A forklift beeped. Nothing had changed. And that was the problem. I walked straight past the floor manager's office. His door was open. He was talking to someone, probably about quotas. I tapped the glass once. He looked up and blinked like I was a ghost. "Mike," he said, standing. "Hey, you look better. We were meaning to." I raised my hand. "No need. I'm not here to yell. I'm not here to ask for anything either." He hesitated. "All right." I stepped in just enough for him to hear me clear. "I gave you everything," I said. "Every weekend. Every night. Every part of myself that I could have given to my family or my life, I gave to this place. And not once, did anyone ask how I was doing." He opened his mouth. I kept going. "I collapsed on your floor. Not one of you called. Not one damn message. That tells me everything I need to know." He started to stammer some excuse. Something about HR, protocol. I cut him off with a shake of my head. "I'm not here for explanations. I'm here so you remember something. When the next reliable guy comes in here smiling, saying yes to everything, maybe don't wait until he ends up in a hospital bed before you remember his name." Silence. Just the hum of the break room fridge behind him. I stepped back, turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing." He looked up. "You did not fire me," I said. "I quit. I just did not realize it at the time." And I walked out. No badge. No clearance. No clipboard in my hand. For the first time in 4 years, I walked out not as an employee, but as a man with nothing to prove. And the second my boots hit the parking lot pavement, I felt it. Freedom. But what came next? I had no plan, no job, no safety net. Just a question that had waited far too long. Now that I am free, who the hell am I? You do not realize how deep you were under until you finally come up for air. That first week after I walked out of Falcon for the last time, I slept. Not the half-sleep I used to get with my phone buzzing at 2 a.m. I mean real sleep. The kind where you wake up and your bones do not feel like cement. The kind where you do not check the time and panic because you might be late for a shift you do not even work anymore. I cleaned the apartment. I opened the blinds. I started taking walks, not fast, not for fitness, just to move. I watched the world go by without rushing to meet it. But somewhere in the quiet, the doubt crept in. Who was I now? I had built my identity around being dependable. The guy you could call last minute. The one who fixed things without asking questions. I did not know how to be anyone else. I spent one whole morning just sitting in the kitchen with a notebook, writing down things I used to love. Music, hiking, fixing up old junk in my garage. I had forgotten all of it. So I tried something. I pulled my old toolbox from under the sink and dragged the busted coffee table out to the patio. I started sanding it, real slow. Just muscle memory and the sound of wood against paper. It was not much, but it was mine. A few days later, I ran into an old friend, Trevor. We used to play in a local band back before adult life swallowed us whole. He worked at a community center now, helping kids with after-school programs. Said they needed someone to teach basic carpentry, just a few hours a week. I said yes, not because I needed the money, but because for the first time, I wanted to say yes. I showed up that Thursday with no expectations. Just a beat-up toolbox, a few 2x4s, and a bunch of nervous kids who had more questions than I had answers. And you know what? I felt good. Not corporate good. Not performance review good. Real good. Soul good. One of the kids, a quiet little guy named Eli, stayed after class. Said he liked the way I talked. Said I reminded him of his uncle who used to build things before he passed. He asked if I could show him how to fix a broken stool he found in the alley behind the center. I said, bring it tomorrow. That was the moment. Not some big speech. Not a viral quote. Just that kid. Just that stool. Just me, breathing. For the first time in years, I was not trying to prove my worth. I was just living it. But before I get to the ending, there is one more thing I have to tell you. The twist that changed everything came in the form of a letter. And it was not from who you think. It showed up on a Wednesday. Plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in blue ink like it came from someone who still thought that meant something. Inside, a letter from Falcon's regional office. Typed. Cold. 2 paragraphs long. The first part was exactly what I expected. We regret to inform you, blah blah blah. Termination processed effective retroactive to your final scheduled shift. They threw in a generic line about policy violations for failing to notify management about extended medical leave. The kind of garbage they use to make sure they do not owe you anything on the way out. But it was the second paragraph that made my jaw tighten. They thanked me for my years of reliable service. Said I had been a valued asset to the team. That phrase, asset, clanged around in my head like a bell I could not unhear. Not a man, not a person, an asset, something to be used. Then written off. I folded the letter slowly. Sat there at the kitchen table with the sun coming in through the window, and that piece of paper burning like an insult in my palm. And here's the kicker. I was not even angry. Not anymore. Because right then, with that final dismissal sitting in front of me, I felt something I had not felt in years. Relief. That was the moment I knew I would never go back. Not just to Falcon, but to any life where I had to beg to be seen. Where silence followed collapse. Where reliable was a word they used to squeeze the life out of you while calling it gratitude. I did not burn the letter. I pinned it to the fridge. A reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I finally walked away from. These days, things are different. Slower. Better. I still teach carpentry at the center. Eli fixed that stool, by the way. Sanded it down, painted it bright red. Said it was for his mom's birthday. She cried when he gave it to her. I picked up some freelance repair work too. Just a few hours here and there. I take jobs I want, not the ones I need. I go on hikes. I read. I call my sister back when she rings. I live. Not for a company. Not for a pat on the back. Not for a shot at being employee of the month. I live for me now. And every once in a while, Someone will ask me, do you ever miss it? The old life, the grind, the routine. And I smile, not even a little. Because once you learn the difference between being useful and being valued, there is no going back. I gave everything to that job, but in the end, it was not loyalty. It was sacrifice. And now? Now I choose myself. Every damn time.